Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you for
Sure.
a kind introduction. Thanks all for being here today. I got to remember to stay in front of this and not wander. I thought I would begin by just telling you a little bit about myself. Arrow keys, shift key, space key, or do I just come down? I'll do this.
Might have to get the presentation first. Click.
There we go. Okay, good. So my name's Todd Brinkman, as Stan suggested, and I'm faculty over at UAF, but I'd also thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. When I was having lunch with the gentleman in the back today, they asked if I felt like I was remote being up in Evanston and Kapong, and I didn't feel that way. And this is why. If you're standing on my deck outside of Fairbanks, this is what you see. My closest neighbor is about 2.5 kilometers away, and we have a small farm off the grid, and that's my family there. My wife, Aaliyah, and my 2 boys. So we live outside and we farm and we work, and then we, in our free time, we hunt and fish and live that type of lifestyle. At work, though, I tell people this is kind of what I do. I study the interactions between people, wildlife, and the environment. And that's great by itself to learn about those components and how they interact. But if we'd really like to inform management and inform positive change, we need to understand how those interactions change over time and what's driving those changes. And then we can start to plan more effectively and manage those 3 interactions much better. Traditionally, I was formally trained as a wildlife ecologist, and us wildlife ecologists, we'd spend all of our time really in those circles and studying the interactions of those 2. But over the last 20 years, the human dimensions, of course, has gained traction because of the complex impacts that people are having on the world these days. And I saw that as a place that we needed a lot more attention. So maybe 20 years ago, I shifted, and now I devote probably at least half of my time to those red circles. And then I continue to do more traditional wildlife ecology as well. So when I was hired at UAF, I was hired as the human dimensions of wildlife specialist. As Stan said, I'm in Norway on sabbatical, and I had 2 main goals getting here. COVID delayed me for years and then shortened my trip once I got here. But right now I'm trying to learn how you do stuff over here, how you manage these systems, and also just how you manage your universities, to try to bring back some ideas to my university. And my other goals is to interact with as many people as I can and build relationships and partnerships, form collaborations. I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to do comparative research between our 2 locations. So let's get into the introduction of Alaska. The first thing is it's a very big state. So it's about the 5th the size of the continental US. And if you lay it on the map, that's to scale. It stretches from north to south and from east to west, if you count the Aleutian Island chains, which is that long finger there. If we compare the 2 countries, Alaska's 1.7 million square kilometers, where Norway's around 365. Our population is very different, which results in a very different density of people. So there's not many people scattered around Alaska. 80% of them live in these small urban pockets, which I'll show you in just a moment. So if you look at our road network, you can see why it is so remote. The lines you see are the major roads, and there's not many secondary roads. And then you see that dotted line there, that's our only railway. And it's really not a passenger train. Some tourists get on it in the summer, but it's not used for those purposes, usually during other types of seasons. There is a marine ferry as well that connects some of those coastal communities that are off the road system. But really, the large amount of the state is inaccessible. And if you look at all the communities, the vast majority of the communities are off the road systems in very remote areas that are only accessible by small aircraft. And because of that, a lot of these small rural communities, they access their local environment using boats in the summer or snowmobiles or snow machines in the winter. A lot of these communities are located on navigable waters. A little bit about the economy. It's not very diverse. We are largely reliant on oil and gas to run our state's operating budget. And we're also quite dependent on the federal government as well. The major industries are oil, tourism, fishing. Timber was big at one time. It's almost non-existent today. And then you can see the different sectors of employment. Just a little bit about the temperature to compare it to here. The interior of Alaska is generally the colder location, the coldest location in the winter, also the warmest location in the summer. So Fairbanks, where my university is in the middle of the state, and you can kind of see in Celsius the change in temperature throughout the months. But it's a big state, so you get down to the southern tip, which is like Ketchikan in southeast Alaska, and it very seldom gets well below zero. So you have these distinct climates being so large. It has all these different climate systems, which of course drive what the ecosystems look like, right? The climate is shaping where the boreal forest is, where the tundra is, where the coastal temperate rainforest is of southeast Alaska. And this next slide is really cool because it just really displays, really visualize. Just keep an eye on these polygons, the shape of the polygons. And then you look at the major culture and languages of the indigenous people. They align almost perfectly. And I think that's just a really striking visualization of how it does shape who we are, what our cultures are, how we interact with our land. And it also shapes how we manage our resources. So the map you see there is the state's Fish and Game Agency. They're regions. They have 5 regions, and those polygons also match these ecosystems. The lines within the regions are the game or fisheries management units where specific populations are managed, but that's all tied together. One other important thing to know about Alaska is 88% of it is public land. Most of that is federal land, so that would be national parks, refuges, Bureau of Land Management land, things like that. State only owns 1/3 of it, and then the indigenous corporations own 12%, but there's very, very little in private land. And across all of that public land, of course, you have all these amazing species, right? A bunch of the big charismatic megafauna that's found in the US. We have all the US's, polar bear, all their Dall sheep, all their ice seals, all their muskox, all their wood bison, most of their caribou, most of these other animals. So having all these animals on these public lands for people to come out and see creates lots of opportunities for tourism. Around 2.25 million tourists visit the state each year. It creates these extensive opportunities, but then of course also requires careful management of these interactions. So there's your general introduction to Alaska. And then I'll turn it over to Rose here.
Okay.